Making their second trip to Louisville in less than 2 months, the out-of-state black armed militia group called the NFAC wanted to make a statement on the day of the Kentucky Derby, demanding justice for Breonna Taylor.
Welcome again back to Open Line.
Hey, good morning, my brother. Once again, so blessed to be with you on the Open Lines. And to all your listeners, all I say is peace and blessings this morning. Let's get into some real conversation.
There you go. And I don't have this brother here. He's definitely known. Grandmaster Jay, who is the leader of the NFAC, the No Effing Around Coalition. Of course, you know what effing means. And they came on the ground and they are following the laws just like any white militia out there. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Grandmaster Jay, because Grandmaster Jay was arrested, as I said, at the tail end of this week. And he is charged between federal and state charges. That's correct, Grandmaster Jay?
First of all, you are correct, but I'll go ahead and let you finish your summation before I speak.
Okay. And Grandmaster Jay, I'm going to let you speak, and you can start wherever you would like to start. If you want to start in a sense of why you put this coalition together, or you can start in a sense of the arrest that had taken place. You have the mic, my brother.
Wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the thousands of phone calls that came down to both facilities where they did not want to keep me any longer than they had. Wanted to first start off with that. I bid everybody grand rising, and I also would like to say that it's ironic, as was pointed out earlier, that the day that this federal task force came to my place to apprehend me and to serve the warrant, that it was almost identical to what happened with Fred Hampton. It was at the same time. It was the same tactics. Only difference was they too approached a lot more cautiously, but I can't get into those details. All that'll come out. If you're not familiar with the NFAC, we are the largest black militia, all black militia. We're not a hate group. We never were. We're not a racist hate group. We are not we're not opposed or threaten anybody, anything of that nature. We were a black militia put together to protect the black community, put together to educate our own people about owning firearms responsibly, and to also teach the art and practice the art of self-policing for our own people so we could take care of ourselves when it appears that when other people do it, we tend to end up dead. We were the first on the ground for Ahmaud Arbery. We were on the ground for in Louisville, Kentucky, twice, and then, of course, down in Lafayette. All of these in support of blacks who were either murdered or investigations that appeared to be stalled surrounding the murders of black people, most notably Breonna Taylor in the Kentucky space. And this is what I want to focus on. There are some who feel that what has happened to me is political payback for us bringing the light to the Breonna Taylor situation, which is what our goal was. It was not to destroy or to hurt anyone. The NFAC has always operated within the confines of the law so that this very thing wouldn't happen. And it appears that they found a loophole around that by coming up with these trumped up charges. Trumped up charges or not, I still have to deal with them. I am currently in a house arrest situation. I've had several rights removed from me that some folks say would infringe on my First Amendment rights, but they say they were conditions of my release. I am not out of the woods. This is not over. This is just beginning. I will say this also. I need the support of everyone. If you consider yourself to be a member of this community, then you should be doing more than just sitting on the side right now. It's amazing to me that we get in the streets and we protest about people after they are killed, and we lament and we fight. But when people are alive, those same individuals, we sit on the sidelines and we wait for something to happen as if we're waiting for a martyr or sacrifice. What's happened here is not just a slap in the face to me and my organization, but a slap in the face to the pro-black movement, a slap in the face to those who can see the unfairness in the judicial system. A young man went up to Wisconsin, murdered 2 people, same thing, federal charges, blah, 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 $2 million, he's out, and we don't hear anything about it. Same thing happens with the black man, and all of a sudden it's front page news, and everyone is sitting sitting back talking about, ooh, I don't know. This is not the time for, ooh, I don't know. This is the time for Black folks to say, now is our time to demonstrate some type of unified response to what has happened. Federal level, they're alleging that I broke a USC code for assaulting, intimidating, impeding. There were some other things that I would think you'd have to be in a person's presence to do. A charge that, that's what I did by shining a flashlight up to a building top to see who was up there looking at us and then moving on. But apparently they say I broke this law back in September when we went down for the second march into Louisville at the Derby, which was interesting. But at the end of the day, then the state came back and, interestingly enough, gave me the same charge that they gave to the officer that fired into the Breonna Taylor residence. But they said that he, threatened the neighbors when the bullets went into other homes. So I have that charge also. They took those charges, they multiplied them times 5 for each. They alleged there were 5 officers who were up there, and so they said there should be 5 counts. So there are state charges, which are wanton endangerment, and then of course the U.S. federal charge, what they're saying is, you threatened, you assaulted, or you intimidated, or something of this particular statute that I did to these police officers knowingly, and that's what the charge is. It was 2-part cooperation between the federal and the state to try to make this happen, because I don't live in the state of Kentucky. So in order to enact their jurisdiction, they had to get me back to the state of Kentucky. So the feds came and, of course, enacted their warrants. They executed a warrant and then delivered to me to the state of Kentucky. And then the state of Kentucky did what they had to do. So those are the charges. A lot of people, even those folks who are lawyers and prosecutors, have said that this is BS, that these are trumped up charges, that this is very weak. But what it does is, in effect, give them what they actually want, to silence me. It was really not about coming after me. If I was a threat, they had to find a way to silence me, specifically by forbidding me to speak anymore online, forbidding me to travel and actually participate in any of the functions of my militia. Basically to sit home, shut up, and sit down, and so forth. So I understand that's what the mission is, but at the end of the day, I now have to work through the system. So that's what happened. So I'm going to go to the other side. Once I was apprehended by the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Special Task Force that they now have, that was created by your current president to deal with these types of situations, as they called it. Once I was in their custody and then taken to this facility, I think it became quite apparent that Black America, to some degree, was not going to just sit by. And as I said before, the response was overwhelming. And of course, I too was already in communication with lawyers and so forth, because I was totally blindsided by this. I could not imagine what they were talking about. I find it interesting that they came on December to get me for something that they said happened in September, when I went back to Louisville on October the 5th and actually I attended the police chief's inauguration, if you want to call that, and I even spoke at her inauguration, got a standing ovation. So I'm thinking, if I had done these things, then why didn't you apprehend me then in a room full of police officers? What was the mystery then? What was the big deal? And most importantly, if these law enforcement officials perceived all of this, and I was standing right there in front of the police metro hall, why didn't they just arrest me then? It raises a lot of questions, and the timing of itself is suspect. But at the end of the day, I explained to you what I think the overall goal is. It's ironic that they have not done this to these white militias,
Right,
at all. And I've seen video where they've gone to the state house, they've pointed weapons right at these guys. Nothing. So again, if you're talking about systemic racism in America, if you're talking about a judicial system that is built against us and for them, if you're talking about people who probably don't know the difference between justice and revenge, and the difference between vengeance and revenge, then you're letting it play out against you again. And I'm going to end by saying this. If we don't stop repeating history, because history doesn't repeat itself, you're given the opportunity to take the same test many times. You have to do it differently this time. That's all I have to say about that. And I realized they had already broken the door down, and I didn't hear them. I was surprised. surprised when they showed me what the charge and the date was, but I wasn't surprised at none of what they did. As a matter of fact, I was cool as a fan, as they say. And, you know, it's almost like he's been expecting it. Oh, I have. But what I was thinking was that you would have come with something, you know, that's what surprised me. Like, this is it. This is what you guys put together. Okay. All right. Let's go. Let's roll. Here you go. Let's go. Let me get my hands up. Let me get these cuffs on. Let's go. Let's roll. This is a game. All right. So that's what I was surprised about. But in this particular instance, I am very familiar with the history of COINTELPRO, Operation Black Messiah, and a few other programs that were designed by the U.S. government to handicap or to impede any type of Black nationalist movement within the United States. Remember, J. Edgar Hoover said that the next Messiah that they have will give to them. It was J. Edgar Hoover who said that we must prevent the rise of a Black charismatic male that could energize or galvanize the Black nationalist movement. And so we must make sure that if anyone comes along like that, they are either to be humiliated, disgraced, imprisoned, and if not else, killed. So this is not a new program. I'm very much aware of that. I'm very much aware of how they destroyed the Black Panthers from the inside, and the FCSC and a few other organizations. So yes, very much aware of that. And then looking at the history of the NFAC and where it was going or where it is going or where they perceived it to be going, this reaction was not surprising. The NFAC, somewhere now about 3 years old, burst onto the American scene, as we call it, coming out of the pandemic with our appearance in Brunswick, Georgia, after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. After that, there was some struggle to identify who he was, but once people realized that there was another organization on the street, so to speak, that was standing up from a Second Amendment right perspective and First Amendment right perspective for Black folks, our membership began to grow. By the time we went to Stone Mountain, Georgia, July 4th, to answer a threat that was made. People keep acting like they don't remember when this happened. There are even some folks that are claiming it never happened, but you can go back and do your research for real. You all remember somebody made a threat that on July 4th, they'd start killing Black people at 8 p.m. And of course, our response was to find out where these folks were, pull up there and say, okay, you ready to start killing Black folks? We here, we are at. We pulled up, and of course, we pulled up at the home of the Ku Klux Klan, which was Stone Mountain, because that's where the Klan was born or reborn in America, if you don't know your history. They were known to be there on July 4th. So we pulled up 1,500 strong. From that moment, a lot of folks became aware of us. Again, our membership grew. And then, of course, we focused on the Breonna Taylor situation and, of course, the lack of transparency. So, again, this is where we had become so large that we couldn't just show up. We had to reach out to municipalities and let them know that a large number of heavily armed Blacks in the militia would be showing up in your city, not to invade but to express and make a political point and to have a conversation with the legislature and the legal structure as to what the problem was, why is this case taking so long, what is going on. And so we went into Louisville, Kentucky, and the first time about 3,500 strong. And again, that was historic, but nobody talked about that. And then, of course, we came back during the Derby, during September, which is where they alleged that this particular offense happened. Came back. And so we've been steadily growing in number and steadily making our presence felt. And then in the situation down in Louisiana, if you all remember, it was twofold. It was not so much that we were outraged by the Pellerin shooting. It was also the fact that we had a sitting U.S. Congressman who actually threatened myself and threatened our militia if we exercised our constitutional rights in their city. So we had double reason to visit Lafayette, Louisiana, which we did, which was a very successful event, as you said, very impactful for the people, and also helped to grow our membership even more. The NFAC across the United States has grown remarkably fast and has become something that a lot of people who actually become aware of it tend to try to classify us as somebody else. They want to say, oh, they remind me of the Black Panthers. Oh, they remind me of the Huey Newton Club. Oh, they remind me to go through all these organizations before we tell them, no, we don't. We're a completely new animal. We are a Black militia and we're affiliated internationally. We started off just here in the United States, and now we're spread around the globe, Africa, the UK, the Caribbean, South America, and then, of course, there are other militias out other resistance movements that have aligned with us. So we have become an international Black militia coalition with different missions in different countries, but also in this country with the mission that I stated before. So that is who we are. And it's funny that this happened. We're in the process of actually solidifying our structures to the point where some of them can become self-independently functioning and so forth. So we've been growing for the last 3 years. That's what the NFAC is.
Gotcha.
Grandmaster Jay, thanks for coming on today and sharing. You know, getting a chance to hear you for the very first time, you strike me as someone who is an educator who wants to turn it into action. And it talked about understanding the history of the, J. Edgar Hoover, the Black Panthers, First and Second Amendment. I'm curious to a couple of things. Right? One, how do you, if you can share, how do you protect to make sure you don't have infiltration of your organization to, cut the roots out from it? And secondly, what are the things about the First and Second Amendment that you're finding that Black and brown people are not as aware of that they should be aware of?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to talk too much about the methodologies that we use to vet people or to further expose people within our organization that raise questions with regards to who they are or who sent them or what their motives may be. But I will tell you that we have a very aggressive program coming into the NFAC. And once you're in the NFAC, there has been, as many folks have seen, folks dismissed. We don't owe an explanation to the public. We don't try to slander people's names. We just say that they're no longer a member. But internally, there was probably something that came up. We're constantly looking because of what our qualifications are. That's all I'm going to say as far as that. But very much adamant. That's why in the very beginning, when I put the NFAC together, the rules were to keep certain individuals out, to keep the possibility of there being, as we call, a sleeper or someone who may be a double agent, as people like to say, to prevent them from, to reduce the possibility of them even getting into the organization. But then even once they're in, a constant analysis of their behavior, of their statements, of their associations. We do all of that. To answer the other piece, which is going to be a little more detailed, with regards to the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, it's not so much what we don't know. Everybody knows the First Amendment. I mean, I don't care what color you are. Your right to say what you want to say when you want to say it. Your right to assemble peacefully and, and raise a grievance and so forth. Everybody knows that. I think that what we're finding out today in the first half is that people of color, I don't really get behind the term people of color. I'm going to say this. If you say people of color to me, I'm going to say people without color. Everybody else is the people without color. They get offended. So I'm going to say Black people, because that is a frame of mind. It is also our Kemetic roots name. It is not something that was made up here in this country, as opposed to what they want you to believe. Do your research. Read the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, and do a deeper dive into why I call us all Black. What we don't know. Everybody knows the First Amendment. I mean, I don't care what color you are. Your right to say what you want to say when you want to say it. Your right to assemble peacefully and, and raise a grievance and so forth. Everybody knows that. I think that what we're finding out today in the first half is that people of color, I don't really get behind the term people of color. I'm going to say this. If you say people of color to me, I'm going to say people without color. Everybody else is the people without color. They get offended. So I'm going to say Black people, because that is a frame of mind. It is also our Kemetic roots name. It is not something that was made up here in this country, as opposed to what they want you to believe. Do your research. Read the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, and do a deeper dive into why I call us all Black. But when it comes to Black people, with regards to the law, how the law is applied is the issue. I don't think a lot of our folks are now starting to realize that they apply that First Amendment permission, as I call it, selectively. Look at what's happening in social media, which I hope I'm not on right now, because that's one of my conditions. This is a radio show, not a internet broadcast. I mean, not a social media broadcast. But you're finding censorship. Censorship is rampant now across all those platforms, and folks are actually getting irritated that they're finding out things are being removed, things are being blocked, things are being, people are not getting alerts. These things are happening behind the scenes, and they're technically violating your First Amendment right. in a very subtle way. They don't want you to get out certain things. They're screening what goes out there. They say they're doing it in the name of. Well, First Amendment means that there is no in the name of. You say what you want to say, okay? Second Amendment right is where we have our problem. You see, we've been socialized in this country to associate weapons and Black people with violence and crime, when the truth of the matter is the Second Amendment does not discriminate, and your right to bear arms has nothing to do with criminality. But when you want to keep a certain group of people in a position where you can always dominate, you want to keep a group of people in a position where you can always determine their final outcome, then you have to continue to repeat what Queen Elizabeth did back in the 1800s when she gave guns to the Arabs to invade Africa, and Africans ran up against something they had never encountered before using spears and knives. Now here come bullets. So as bullets make the change in the story, then we have to make sure that any group that we want to keep in a lower position, second level citizen position, we must prevent them from getting their hands on guns. You've been socialized to be afraid of guns. You've been socialized that when somebody shows up with a gun, you don't know what's going on. The first thing you do is you Google the master. So he can come down and find out why you got a weapon. At the end of the day, we then get into the fact that now that you've been socialized to believe that, you have a hard time realizing that the Second Amendment applies to you and everyone else with certain conditions. If you meet those conditions, as everyone in the NFAC must, then you can bear those arms. What you're not aware of, and what we're finding out from a lot of our folks is there is no extra requirement for us. They didn't have to do anything special. When people say, well, why do Black people get to carry guns like that? Well, why does it matter if they're Black? How about why do people get to carry guns like that? Because the Constitution says so. Every time I've spoken about this, I keep pointing to the fact that you act like we're a gang or we're a bunch of marauding criminals who just rode into town. No, we're all legally authorized, legally authorized to own weapons. We're all legal citizens. None of us are, any of those things, the things they're trying to turn me into. If you all haven't caught on, they're trying to do to you. Do to me what they've done to a lot of you. And that is, remember what the 13th Amendment says, let no man be a slave, lest he be a criminal, okay? Also, anyone who has certain things on their criminal record, now the criminal, cannot possess firearms. So they've systematically disarmed you using the law. And now we're finding out that as more and more Black folks are arming themselves, because Black folks are the ones buying all the guns now. Notice there's a weapon shortage all of a sudden. Notice there's an ammo shortage all of a sudden. As soon as we begin to partake, this is what we're learning. As soon as we try to drink from the same lake that's right in front of us that they're drinking from, they're like, whoa, hold on, slow down. No, you can't do that. That's what we're finding out. And some folks, this is a wake-up call for them. They found out just this year alone, trying to purchase a firearm just so they can legally protect themselves. They run into all kinds of roadblocks, but they're looking at people across the aisle get the treatment, so to speak. So I think that what we're finding out, First Amendment, yes, censorship does exist, but also, finally, that there is a marriage between the two. You see, the Second Amendment was put in place so that it could back up the First Amendment. Okay, I came to say what I gotta say, and I'm legally armed in case anybody has such a negative response to what I'm saying that you feel the need that you want to aggress us. I am now in a position per the Constitution to defend myself. A lot of folks don't realize that when the NFAC came on the scene, we were not trying to lead the way in that space. We were trying to imitate the blueprint for everyone. That if you're going to continue to protest in the environment that we're in today, you need to arm yourselves legally. You don't need security. You are security legally. And then you'll see a different response. Everywhere the NFAC has gone, everywhere that we have worked, participated, if you notice, the law enforcement, they act completely different because of the fact that we're just as armed as they are. And that is your constitutional right. It doesn't mean that you get to go out and enact revenge. It doesn't give you the right to go out and commit crime. It gives you the right to legally defend yourself and to legally arm yourself. You have the right under the First Amendment. Our people, in the times that we're living in right now, are finding out that just exercising your First Amendment right hasn't changed a thing. So they've gotten used to that. But when you turn it up another notch and you arm yourself per the Constitution, and I think that's the thing that we all should have learned from what happened in the 60s, was that those brothers and sisters, they armed themselves too against a society that was not comfortable with seeing Black people with guns overwatching the very people who had guns. There mentality that a lot of those young people that they had. And if you all don't know your history, research some of those folks. They were young. They were not folks like ourselves. The average age of members in the NFAC, we're not young folks. Most of us are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and up. We just recently allowed younger folks to come in because they wanted to be a part of the organization. They have an extra level of screening for maturity and an understanding of constitutional law as it applies to what we're doing. You can't come in gung-ho and you don't understand the First and the Second Amendment rights, and we have to educate you, that's fine. But I think that the challenge we're looking at today is that there are a lot of folks who still don't understand that when you see a black person with a weapon legally, there's nothing wrong at all. They're exercising their constitutional rights the same way that you